armored vehicles, and a handcuffed dictator in federal court. Tonight, what Nicolás Maduro told a federal judge, plus the challenge in Caracas. How exactly did America's bravest track down one of America's most wanted?
Nicolás Maduro got to meet some great Americans for a date in Chicago 3 nights ago. He didn't know they were coming until 3 minutes before they arrived.
Rob O'Neill, former SEAL Team 6 member, with us tonight in moments. Also happening this evening, you can call it the final waltz. When the governor, Tim Walz, says he is calling it quits as questions of fraud mount in Minnesota, and Maha's new shot. The announcement tonight from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the government now has new recommendations for the country's newborns. But first tonight, here from the Hill, the dictator faces justice and the Trump administration faces new questions. Nicolás Maduro, traveling by helicopter and then in an armored vehicle heading from a federal detention center to a federal courtroom today. The former Venezuelan dictator claiming that he's a, quote, decent man as he sat before a judge. And tonight, News Nation with new details on how elite U.S. military forces were able to pull over the daring overnight raid in one of South America's largest cities. But at this very moment right now, as we take a live look up on Capitol Hill, lawmakers huddled behind closed doors, being briefed by the senior-most members of the Trump administration. What exactly is the president's plan, as he puts it, to run Venezuela? And is there one? Our Joe Khalil is live outside that room. Kelly Meyer on the latest threats from the president. But we begin tonight with our Brian Enton on that surreal scene, Brian, that was in and across New York City earlier today.
Yeah, I think that's the best word for it, Blake. Surreal. You think about Maduro living the high life in Venezuela, now in New York City. He showed up, came in a helicopter, then he was put into the Humvee, taken to a back entrance here at the federal courthouse behind me. I was in the courthouse. There were dozens of DEA agents there surrounding him. He was shackled at the ankles. He was sitting at a desk in the courtroom. The lawyer was in the middle, and his wife was on the other end. And it was interesting, Blake, when they asked him to confirm his name, the judge did, he went on this long speech basically saying that he's innocent, that he is a prisoner of war, that he is a decent man, that he is the president of Venezuela. They were having to translate what he was saying, and finally the judge just stopped him and said, "This isn't the time for that. I'm just trying to confirm your name." But he took copious notes throughout the entire hearing. That was interesting too. He basically never stopped writing on a notepad. When it was time for his wife to speak, she said, "I am the first lady of Venezuela." She also said she was innocent and not guilty. And at the end of the hearing, her attorney actually asked for her to receive some medical attention because he claims that she was hurt when the U.S. went in and took them out of their home, that she had some injuries to her head and also perhaps a broken rib. And the judge said, okay, we'll get her the medical attention. One last thing, Blake, I spent the whole weekend in Little Venezuela, in Miami, in Doral, with all the Venezuelans there, making connections with them and also their family members back in Venezuela. And I want to show you this picture that we just had texted to us from a woman in Venezuela right now who says this, you'll see it in a second, it's security forces out on the street. She says that there are these special police out on the street right now in Caracas doing checkpoints and stop, there's the picture, Blake, and stopping people and checking their cell phones to see if they are messaging anything against Maduro right now, and that they're jailing them if they are. And she actually told us she had to delete the messages she was sending us. That's the kind of fear that people are still living in right now in Venezuela, Blake.
Wow, our Brian Enton live tonight to start us off here. Brian, thank you. Over now to the Capitol. Congressional briefing happening right now. Our Joe Khalil joins us with the very latest as those lawmakers are in that room behind him. Joe?
Yeah, Blake, we saw the briefers come in already. These are the people who were key to not just making decisions around the Maduro raid, but likely who are going to continue to make decisions about Venezuela for the administration moving forward. Meeting with this key select group of lawmakers, it's party leaders from the House and Senate, it's leaders of the relevant committees for Venezuela in the House and Senate as well. Democrats are clearly frustrated, Blake, that they were not notified until after the fact about the raid. They also have questions about what it really looks like in practice in Venezuela if, as President Trump says, the U.S. is running things. How do you do that without boots on the ground? What happens if there's an attack, for example, on American service members? And the legal basis about whether moving forward this kind of thing happens in other places as well. Those are the kinds of questions that are being asked right now, we're told, inside of that room. On the Republican side, you've got people like Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune who say they don't share those same concerns. They are perfectly happy with the amount of information the administration has shared with them already. Take a listen to what Speaker Johnson said before heading into that skiff.
But our understanding is that this is an operation that only required notice to Congress and not prior authorization. I spoke with the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State and the President himself within those hours after it began. Marco Rubio called me at 4 a.m.
Now, Blake, at some point later this week, there's going to be a vote on a war powers resolution. It's an attempt to try to take congressional authority sort of back. But whether that passes, it's an open question. And even if it does, whether the Pentagon or the White House honors that, too, also an open question right now.
Joe Kay, live for us tonight, Capitol Hallways. Joe, thank you. The action in Venezuela raising questions about who or what country as well could be next. We've heard President Trump go down that lane. Our Kelly Meyer live at the White House with the latest there. Kelly?
Yeah, and you made that point first over the weekend, Blake. Cuba, Colombia, even Greenland, the president clearly sending warning signs to other nations. As his deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller, just told me they are doubling down that the U.S. is running Venezuela. Colombia now, for example, President Trump believes is guilty of allowing drugs into the country, into the U.S., but that country is now putting 30,000 troops at the border with Venezuela. Colombia's president asking the people of Colombia to defend him, quote, against any illegitimate violent act. Here's more from the president on Air Force One.
Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States, and he's not going to be doing it very long.
And President Trump re-upping his wish to take over Greenland, the mineral-rich country that he says the U.S. needs for national security. Greenlanders overwhelmingly disagree and oppose U.S. control. And Cuba is getting the most attention from everyone from Secretary Rubio to Lindsey Graham. Trump says Cuba is ready to fall, warning that Havana can no longer rely on Caracas for oil. Now, Venezuela is Cuba's closest ally in Latin America and a vital source of low-cost oil and vital for Cuba's economy really since 1999. And on average, Cuba received 35,000 barrels a day of oil from Venezuela. Blake?
Kelly Meyer, live for us over at the White House. Kelly, thank you. All right, so President Trump says that Venezuela stole U.S. oil as part of the justification for Maduro's capture. So let me take you briefly here on sort of what the president means by that and what's happened basically over the last 50 years or so. So you go back to 1976, okay? Venezuela created basically its state-run oil company. It started effectively nationalized its oil industry. Fast forward a little more than a couple decades later, you got Hugo Chavez, who was elected. Then that began the era of more state control. Go to 2007. Venezuela then gets rid of assets, basically effectively kicks ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips out of the country, says if you're not going to be with us, you're out of the country. Those two companies get out. Nicolás Maduro, 2013, effectively takes power in Venezuela. So that's what the president means when he says that they stole the oil. They stole the U.S. oil. Now, as for the exports there in Venezuela, they have dropped dramatically in the years that have followed. Look at this. The country was once a leader in oil production, right? I mean, you're talking about nearly 4 million barrels a day in the 70s there before they nationalized it. And then you go over here to where Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro took over, and look at that. Straight line down, now only essentially producing about 1 million oils a barrel per day. Joining us now, he's an expert with all this. Francisco Monaldi, director of the Latin American Energy Program, Rice University in Houston, knows this in and out. Francisco, thanks for being with us tonight. This is quite literally the $17 trillion question, right? Like when you do Venezuela's oil reserves and the price of oil today, it's $17 trillion. And the president says, we're going to start running it. What does that look like?
Well, it's very early to tell if this will pay off in terms of a big change in the trajectory of the Venezuelan oil industry. As you pointed out, it has been going down for many, many years because of the policies implemented by Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro. So companies, in order to be willing to invest billions of dollars required to recover the industry, will have to see, change in terms of institutions, contracts, and of course, political change and political stability. And we are not there yet, so we have to see, and I think companies are going to wait and see what is offered to them.
Here's what the president told our Libby Dean aboard Air Force One last night, and then we'll pick it up on the other side.
The infrastructure is rusty, rotten, most of it unusable. It's old, it's broken. You see pipes laying all over the ground. Nothing's been invested for years.
Is he right there? And if so, how long would it take everything to sort of crank up and maybe even make its way back here to the United States?
Well, there are companies like Chevron, which are still operating there.
Right.
Chevron produces about 25% of Venezuela's oil, and those facilities are in relatively good shape because they have been operating on them. There are parts of the Venezuelan oil industry that is completely decrepit, as the president mentioned. So my estimate is that it would require about $100 billion and perhaps almost a decade to recover to the peak levels that you showed in your figure before. But it will depend, as I mentioned, a lot on the institutions, contracts, and sort of the perception that political stability is there to stay, because otherwise, the history of Venezuela shows a lot of government reneging on oil deals in the past.
Francisco Monaldi, as you know, Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, you add up their market cap, they add up to $1 trillion in value here in the United States, up 2% and 5% today, those stocks were. Francisco Monaldi knows this stuff inside and out with us tonight here on The Hill. Thanks for being with us, sir. Appreciate the perspective.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, still to come. Operation Absolute Resolve, the extraordinary mission to capture Maduro, actually happened. Someone on the other side of the break, former member of SEAL Team 6, joins us. How did this happen? How does the United States military pull this off? Rob O'Neill with us. We're going to ask him. Plus, Mamdani and Maduro. The New York City mayor slams the capture of Maduro. They've got thousands of Venezuelans there in New York. Why'd he do it? Bill de Blasio responds with us tonight. And the fraud fallout. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says he is out, who he is now blaming for the billions lost to fraud in his state. I thank you for being with us tonight. First Monday of the new year, and is there news? Rob O'Neill with us when you return on the other side. That, of course, is some of the view from Caracas, Venezuela in the dead of night over the weekend. Cameras capturing these moments, explosions going off, U.S. helicopters flying into Caracas, capturing the Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro and his wife. Now, sources tell NewsNation a CIA informant within the Venezuelan government helped the U.S. locate Maduro. The CIA also using stealth drones to track the former Venezuelan leader before the operation. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, describing some of the actions today.
As nearly 200 of our greatest Americans went downtown in Caracas, it seems those Russian air defenses didn't quite work so well, did they? Downtown Caracas, and grabbed an indicted individual wanted by American justice in support of law enforcement without a single American killed.
Joining us now, former Navy SEAL Robert O'Neill, member of SEAL Team 6 that took out Osama bin Laden. He is also the author of The Operator. Rob, it is so nice to see you. Great to have you back. I cannot wait to hear your perspective on this, because we learned from the Secretary of War today, as he put it, that nearly 200 of our greatest Americans went downtown into Caracas.
Right.
What does that say about the size, the scope, the risk involved here, and just sort of what were your initial thoughts when you learned of all this?
Thank you for having me, Blake. I'm happy to be on with you on Monday, especially after this. I'm having a hard time wiping the smile off of my face. What this tells me, they went 10 miles inland from the Caribbean Sea into Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, to get Mr. Maduro. We'll just leave it at that. And that means there's such a large team behind the scenes that you're never going to hear from that did everything from turning the lights off to turning the missiles off to organizing where the strikes are going to come to hit the air defenses. And you got all the stealth fighters, stealth bombers up top, and the jammers, the drones, all that stuff. Just because you're getting rotary wing aircraft, 150 aircraft flew in there from all over the place. And it shows the planning, the meticulous planning, and then the execution. Because as we all know, once the perfect plan exists when you're planning. Once you leave, Murphy shows up. And it did show up. They took fire. When I first heard that the elite Cuban security shot at Delta Force, my first question was why? But they did. They found out what happens. They were quick. I think there were 30 minutes on the ground, which is impressive, but they were prepared to stay longer. They brought what I call the guerrilla package. You're talking everything from using your boots to kick it in up to thermobaric torches to saw through stuff that he might try to get into a safe room. They were ready. They were prepared. They knocked it out of the park. They got out of there. They've got Maduro in New York in jail with his wife. All that in like 48 hours. America's back. Peace through strength, baby.
I want to ask you about sort of two different moments. One is the approach. As you're going into a mission like this, generally speaking, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you experiencing? And then, as we heard from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, over the weekend, they got to the Maduro compound at about 2 o'clock local time. Then when you're at the compound, what's that like?
Well, once you're in the bird and you're in harm's way on your way to the X, it's kind of refreshing because none of this stuff matters. Getting hit by a missile, none of my business. I got nothing to do with it. We get shot down, not my problem. Once my boots hit the deck, I got my gun in my hands. In my case, you got SEAL Team 6 coming right up in you, and it's going to be bad for you. It's what we train for. Like, for us, training is the hard part because we do it over and over. We're meticulous. When we get game on, it's seriously like the New York Knicks showed up and they're playing an elementary school team. It's just silliness. And just go in there and do your job. We got to a point with the shooters there that it was so good we were wondering if we were missing something. But the flight in's relaxing because I got my boys. Everything's checked. You can double check to make sure you got your press check, your weapons ready to fire. But it's just some guys just. At what point do I take out my AirPods and hit pause on Ted Nugent?
We know that Nicolás Maduro and his wife gave up. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff revealed that. What was that moment potentially like? Like if you're there, you're in front of them, they surrender. I don't know if that's the correct term, but
yeah,
give up.
It is.
What is that moment like? How's that handled?
Well, this is great. And this is why you have the good guys in the room, especially tier 1 operators like Delta Force, because they have shot placement, target identification, and just because you get a gun pointed at you doesn't mean they're going to shoot you. If you give them hostile intent, they will. They went in there to capture this guy, and they did. You got to figure, even talking back to the flight in and the shootout on the way up, you're going to have adrenaline. They still have the ultimate professionalism to see a target, realize that's what we would call precious cargo. Don't shoot them, grab them, cuff them, take them out. Obviously, you're going to check them for weapons and whatnot. In some cases, suicide bombs and stuff to get them out of there too. They're professionals at this, and it's such a different mission. This is no kidding a capture mission they have to do. It's meticulous. This is where if you're going to take shots, they need to be well placed shots, headshots on the security, and then you're going to have to capture the guy. A lot of professionalism, and this is a great mission all around. But think of the countless hours, days, weeks, years of training these operators did to get their one shot at the title. And man, they got a knockout in the first round.
Yeah, let me ask you about the training, because obviously there's a lot of questions about the region and what may or may not come next, and instability, and we've heard from the commander-in-chief. The top elite forces within our U.S. military right now, and we know these operations take many months to plan. What are they likely doing right now?
Right now you've got the team that assisted them back to, which is going to be a different team that brought them back to New York in the helicopters. I'm up in New York here, and they flew the helicopters in last night. I was talking to some veterans that saw them fly by. They're going to keep a lot of the mission down there in the Caribbean. There's still going to be work to do. There could be vessel board search and seizure, which is a Navy SEALs job. But again, Delta can do it. Rangers can do it. A lot of guys can do it. They're all there. They've got, Navy's down there, but we'll give boys a ride. We've got bases down there. They can hold for follow-on missions. The good thing, though, is with the deterrent. This is when you smack someone really hard, you look them in the eye and you say, no. You're going to stop that now, and we're going to see the ripple effect. This is so good for the people on the ground. Yeah, the Venezuelans, but yes, the Colombians. It's good for people in Ecuador. The Brazilians should be happy. This is awesome what's happening here. This is so good right now. You've just tacked years on when China is going to have the stones to even attempt Taiwan.
Rob O'Neill, always appreciate the insight and the perspective. Always great to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Be well. Talk soon. Of course. All right, still much more ahead here on The Hill. Nicolás Maduro's capture exposes a widening rift on the left. The New York City mayor, did you hear what he had to say? Zoran Mamdani. What does Bill de Blasio make of it? He's joining us on the other side of the break. And a big change to childhood vaccines. The CDC eliminates 6 recommendations from the schedule. What did Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s agency do today? When you return. All right, 6:30 here in Washington, bottom of the hour. Here's one of the top stories that we're following right now. This is a look inside the U.S. Capitol as some lawmakers are being briefed right now by the senior-most members of the Trump administration. What exactly is the Trump administration's plans going forward? As the president says, we will run Venezuela. What about the raid and the decisions that were made then? Some of the many questions we expect that were discussed inside the room. You see the microphone out there as those lawmakers come to the microphone and explain what they learned from Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, and others. We will monitor it, turn it around as we learn more. Here's a look at some other stories that are coming into our newsroom at this hour as well. Late this afternoon, in an unprecedented move, the Centers for Disease Control slashed the recommended childhood vaccines number from 17 to 11, suggesting that healthy kids no longer need shots for the flu, RSV, meningitis, or hepatitis A and B. Now, that puts the country in line with the much smaller country, for example, of Denmark. The Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., releasing a statement reading in part, quote, after an exhaustive review of the evidence, we are aligning the U.S. childhood vaccine schedule with international consensus while strengthening transparency and informed consent. So that's the government's position. But some health experts already slamming that announcement, calling it dangerous, saying it could erode confidence in vaccines. We are also keeping our eyes on major movement in Minnesota. The governor there, Tim Walz, announcing today that he will drop his re-election bid. Of course, all of this comes in the backdrop of those fraud allegations in his state. Republicans, many critics, doesn't even really what side of the aisle you might be on, they argue that he hasn't done enough to fight fraud, taking fraudsters from taking funds from the state's social services programs. The governor today accusing Republicans of playing political games.
Every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who want to prey on our differences. So I've decided to step out of this race, and I'll let others worry about the election while I focus on the work that's in front of me for the next year.
Now, President Trump responding on Truth Social, saying that Walz is not running, quote, because he was caught red-handed along with Ilhan Omar and others of her Somali friends, stealing tens of billions of taxpayer dollars. The governor's term ends in January of next year, so he still holds that position for another year. Well, a man is in custody for allegedly using a hammer to bust windows at the home of Vice President J.D. Vance, his home in Ohio. Our local Nexstar affiliate, WDTN in Ohio, tracking the details of that story, reporting tonight that a 26-year-old was arrested after a Secret Service agent witnessed the incident. That man now faces several charges, including vandalism and criminal trespassing. He is set to be arraigned in court tomorrow. Vance was not home at the time when it happened. The vice president responding on social media saying, quote, as far as I can tell, a crazy person tried to break in by hammering the windows. I'm grateful to the Secret Service and the Cincinnati police for responding quickly, end quote. Well, is there a dilemma for Democrats now with potential implications in the election year? The newly minted mayor of New York City, Zoran Mamdani, condemning the capture of the ousted Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro, calling it an act of war.
I called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act and to make clear that it was an opposition based on being opposed to a pursuit of regime change, to the violation of federal and international law, and a desire to see that be consistent each and every day.
But some Democrats are applauding the move. The Florida Democrat, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she represents the South Florida area, says the arrest was, quote, long overdue. Joining us now, former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, back with us once again here on the Hill. Of course, he held the office that Zohran Mamdani now himself holds. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being with us tonight. Nice to see you again. Appreciate the time, sir. You got it. So let me start with the comments that the current mayor made. Who's got it right, in your opinion, Donald Trump or Zohran Mamdani, when it comes to the capture of Nicolás Maduro?
I think Mamdani's standing up for the United States Constitution, which says you don't go to war without the Congress approving. I think you're seeing folks on both sides of the aisle in Washington saying you cannot go and take a foreign leader out of his presidential palace and take him to America. You just can't do that without the Congress weighing in first, because it has created a situation of war with another country. And by the way, I think what we're seeing more and more, Blake, Americans on left and right do not want us intervening in the affairs of other countries. We've got plenty of problems right here at home to deal with. And if you want to talk about America first, it's not America first to start this up and to put our American service members in danger in the process with no plan for what's next, I guarantee you. So Mamdani's right on this. I actually think a lot of people, Republican and Democrat, would agree with his position.
What would you say, though? There are roughly 22,000 Venezuelans, you know this, who live in New York, who are thrilled with the outcome here. How should they feel given the position of the New York City mayor tonight?
In a city of 8.5 million people, we don't make our decisions based on one community or another. We got to think about what's good for everyone. And the United States going to war without congressional approval is not good. Look, what happens next, Blake? This is always the problem. When you look at Iraq, you look at Vietnam, you look at so many situations in our history. Go in for whatever reason, and then what happens next? We lose a lot of good young American men and women. We lose a huge amount of money that could be used to solve our problems here at home. And our problems are severe in the year 2026. Let's face it, most Americans are struggling to make ends meet. So, no, I'm sorry. It's not about, and I respect the members of the Venezuelan American community, but it's not about one community. It's about this entire country. This is a very dangerous precedent. And I guarantee you, most Americans think we have no business going into Venezuela.
Let me ask you about another community there in New York City, which is the Jewish community. One of the first actions of Mayor Mamdani was to overturn an executive order that says employees there of New York City cannot engage in BDS, which is boycott, divest, and the sanctions movement against Israel. You once said, Mayor de Blasio, quote, "I look forward to challenging them. It's ahistorical," meaning the BDS movement. You called it one of the most ahistorical things I have ever seen. Do you still feel that way? Is Zohran Mamdani wrong to do what he did?
No, he's not wrong to do what he did because there was an election, Blake. He put his views in front of the people. He made very clear that he thought what the government of Israel was doing was wrong.
Have your views changed on it then? Because, I mean, it's clear what you felt a decade ago, and it doesn't align with what Zohran Mamdani just did the other day.
My bigger views on the importance of having a secure homeland for the Jewish people have not changed. I'm extremely distressed by what the Israeli government has done. I think there's been consistent inhumane acts, including allowing a famine in Gaza that really is just inappropriate by any international standard and by our American values. So I think Zohran Mamdani put forward to the people of New York City that the city should not be taking the wrong side on this. And there was a clear and resounding vote in his favor, including, bluntly, many members of the Jewish community who supported him. So I think it's absolutely appropriate for him to have his own executive orders that express the will of the people. That was the reason for his election.
Israel finds his overturning of the executive order involving anti-Semitism to be anti-Semitic. You don't feel that way?
Not at all. I think that is a very specific definition, which leads to that particular definition, which Mayor Adams put in the executive order, is debated within the Jewish community. A lot of people believe it actually endangers freedom of speech, and freedom of speech is something that matters to New Yorkers deeply, and particularly to Jewish New Yorkers, given all the history. So no, I think every mayor has a right to decide their own policies, not to have their predecessor try and do things at the very last moment that don't represent the will of the people.
All right, I got to leave it there. Wish we had more time. Bill de Blasio, mayor there in New York City with us tonight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Come on back soon. Appreciate it. All right, still to come. After capturing Maduro, the president now potentially keeping his eyes on what comes next in Cuba.
Cuba is ready to fall. You know? Yes. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out.
There is so many layers to this story, and I'm telling you, that's one of them that is still to be determined. Full panel. Other side as I head on back. See you then.
Batia Angar Sargon at her new time, 7/6 Central.
Who and what are you fighting for?
Batia, I like that framework.
I'm so proud of you, by the way. You're like my favorite person of 2025.
Batia moves to primetime, starting Saturday at 7/6 Central.
We must abandon the failed policy of nation building and regime change that Hillary Clinton pushed in Iraq, in Libya, in Egypt, and in Syria. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
President Trump, just about 10 years apart. That first soundbite that you heard there, the 2016 RNC convention, this weekend as the commander-in-chief, seemingly two different messages there. His comments raising the question of what's different from now till then, and what could come next. Full panel here with me now. Julia Manchester, White House reporter for The Hill. T.W. Riggi, former communications aide to Senator Lindsey Graham. And Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. Gentlemen, hello. Happy New Year.
Hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Julia, hello. We were busy over the weekend.
We were, 4 a.m. on Saturday.
There you go. You got me beat by just a little. Yeah. Are we in the nation-building business right now, as the president says we're going to run Venezuela?
I think it's certainly a fair question given his comments there. But look, when we ask what's different 10 years ago to now, I think one of the starkest differences is his foreign policy team. The fact that he has Marco Rubio around him. I mean, Rubio has made it known secret that, he would like to target Venezuela and that he would like to see it go in this direction. But I was struck by the president's comments last night aboard Air Force One when he seemed to target a number of different countries, talking about, if an operation happened in Colombia, sounds good to me. Talking about Iran, if the regime were to crack down on protesters. Talking about Greenland and how the U.S. needs to acquire it for national security purposes. I don't necessarily think in all of those scenarios what happened in Venezuela means the president is going to take action there. I do think Venezuela is very unique on its own.
What happened there? From what he said then to now?
I'm not so certain we are in the nation-building business. We apprehended a fugitive of American justice, an indicted person that the Biden administration put a $25 million bounty on, and we, in the Trump administration, jacked it up to 50%. It's unclear whether or not the Maduro regime as a whole is even gone yet. We didn't go in there, shock it on tens of thousands of troops and wipe everyone out and insert a random person unknown to the Venezuelan people. That's not what we're doing yet. Look, we are currently in a global struggle. And the reason that the wisdom of the Monroe Doctrine from 1812 is still applicable today is that our adversaries, specifically China, Russia, and Iran, have been using Venezuela as a vassal state to further their interests in our backyard. And finally, President Trump is the first one to say, no mas.
Is TW right there? I mean, the Biden administration had a $25 million bounty. It went from 15 to 25 million. Yeah. Clearly, they didn't think Nicolás Maduro was just going to fly here and say, hi, hello, how you doing? Did Donald Trump do what the Biden administration essentially tried to do?
Maduro's a bad guy. He was illegitimate. He's a thug. He's a dictator. He's a narco-terrorist. He works with countries that are our enemies, certainly. And there are geopolitical politics that are very difficult to navigate here. But it's laughable to say that we just took out someone from Venezuela and didn't, change the country's dynamic from a government standpoint. Who's in charge? Donald Trump said, we're in charge. We're running the country now. And he said now it's about the oil, when for weeks and months leading up to this, it was about, fentanyl or about cocaine and drug boats. The American people don't understand why we're doing this, and the cost of living is still high. That's what Americans care about. I think de Blasio in your previous segment was correct about that. And we're focused on Colombia and Cuba and Greenland and Venezuela. And look, this was an exceptional operation from a military tactical standpoint. And the folks that went in there and did that work should be commended for what was incredible from a tactical operation in those hours. But we toppled Baghdad in hours and got Saddam Hussein in 9 months. And then we're in Iraq for 9 more years to the tune of 4,500 lives and $1.8 trillion. And Americans do not want to get entangled in this kind of war.
Right, Noriega? That wasn't a...
But even with Noriega, and I'm not even going to put my thumb on the scale of this being bad or Panama, being a good scenario. But even then, there was some understanding of what we were trying to accomplish. And the American public Washington Post released this poll today. They went back and looked at the polling when Noriega was taken out. 84% approval of the American public. Today it was 40% on just the approval of Maduro. It's 24% on running Venezuela.
I have a question for you. Should somebody have taken the bounty and wanted that $25 million, what would have happened in Venezuela? The incentive is to take out the head of the snake, right? That's the incentive of having it. And we would be in the same position. It was the Trump administration who said, we're not just putting out platitudes, we're not just putting out press releases, we're making a move, a clean move. Didn't lose a life, didn't get anything injured, any equipment failures. It was amazing.
I've been saying for a while now that as the dominoes move here, and we don't know, Cuba is the one to keep the eye on. Here was President Trump on Air Force One speaking to our Libby Dean last night.
Well, Cuba always survived because of Venezuela. Now they won't have that money coming in. I think it's just going to fall. I don't think we need any action.
I think you bring up the right point, Julia, which is this is all happening with Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State right now, the former senator from Florida, the former state legislator from West Miami. And now I think that's where some of the attention goes from here. What happens to Cuba, which, by the way, is just 90 miles away from Key West?
Yeah, look, we know that Cuba was relying quite a bit on Venezuela. Now Venezuela's gone. Where is Cuba's ally? They don't have any right now in the region, or not as many as they used to. And also, you have to look at the geopolitical dynamic in Latin America right now. Latin America has swung towards the right over the past year. Ecuador, Chile, we oftentimes hear Colombia used as this example. But Gustavo Petro, first of all, he's term limited. He can't run again. And he's deeply, deeply unpopular. At its core, just chatting with people, Colombia actually is probably more of a conservative country. What we saw happen a few years ago might have been sort of a fluke maybe, but in general, I think the political dynamic in the region favors Rubio and Trump.
Let's go out of the region and Greenland.
Yeah.
People around the president have long said that this is a real thing, that he's not joking about the concept of needing Greenland for national security. The question is whether it moves from not joking to actual action of some kind.
Right. And I think the question is, what does that action look like? Is it going to be like we saw, 70 years ago when there was an offer to buy Greenland, or is there military action? I don't necessarily think what happened in Venezuela, where they were taking out someone they said was a law enforcement operation, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen in Greenland. We don't know. But if it were, that would be insane.
Is it real?
Yeah, it should be. I've been saying it for a long time, and people used to laugh off the idea. Look, it goes back to what I was saying, the global struggle we are in. China and Russia are all over the Arctic. Last time I checked, we don't have a lot of Arctic real estate. The Danes don't have a natural tie to Greenland. It costs them a ton of money to oversee it. They openly can't defend it. We should enter into an agreement financially to take it over.
I'll give you the last word, Dan.
In the hours that we took this action in Venezuela, health insurance premiums doubled for 20 million Americans. That is still happening right now. This was not an immediate threat Venezuela posed against us. This is an action chosen on this timetable, and instead of focusing on costs and what the American people have been begging this government to do, we're embroiling ourselves in another foreign conflict that could cost us billions or millions and years.
Dan, TW, Julia, thank you. We'll be continuing to talk about this.
I'm sure we will.
I have no doubt. Catch you guys soon. All right. Coming up, this year's flu season turning out to be a tough one, where it is hitting hardest on the other side. top stories. First Monday of the new year. Here's our Hill headlines, some of them at least this evening. We'll start here. Kelly fires back at Hegseth over demotion threat. He says, I will fight this with everything I've got. That, of course, is the Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly's message to Pete Hegseth after the Secretary of War said he is moving to downgrade the senator's military retirement rank. It comes as the senator appeared in that viral video telling members of the military that they can refuse illegal orders. Also tonight, how about this? 30 states in CDC's worst tier for flu as super variant spreads. Oof. The number of positive influenza flu cases, jumping by 33% in a single week at the end of last year. Let me show you this real quick, right? The dark colors are bad, where there's lots of flu. So December 13th, you can see the map here. These colors are high or very high. Now look at the rest of the country. It's basically this everywhere right now. The medical community warning that we likely haven't seen the worst of it yet. Finally, tonight, you can keep the change. New coins honoring the nation's 250th anniversary are now entering circulation. Here's what they look like. The Mint unveiling the new commemorative designs for dimes, quarters, and half-dollar coins produced this year. Here's some of it, front and the back, that you can see here for America's 250. Even Frank's giving it a look, our camera operator. They look good, Frank? They do, yeah. Just some of the new coins that are in circulation for our celebration of the 250th anniversary. To check out those stories and more, all you have to do, head on over to thehill.com. I hope you scan the QR code there on your screen. That's where you will find me every morning for our Hill newsletter. All right, Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up next. She will be speaking live to the Deputy U.S. Representative to the United Nations, Tammy Bruce, about the UN Security Council meeting today on Venezuela. That is seconds away here on News Nation. I thank you so much for watching us tonight. Good to be back in the new year. Hope it's been a great start to your new year. I'm Blake Burman. I'll see you tomorrow.